the Ellen situation.
Yeah.
You know, people found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen's actually a bitch. And then we're like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe it. And she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. My buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a monster.
On camera, she laughed while she badgered her staff. And so all good things must end. And also the Ellen DeGeneres show. Yes, the 83-year-old entertainer just announced that the upcoming 19th season of her show will be its last. Apparently, she created a workplace more toxic than an Amazon warehouse in Chernobyl.
Ellen's empire just crumbled, and you won't believe the epic takedown that exposed her true colors. The Queen of Daytime Smiles has been dethroned, not by a rival talk show, but by the unlikely duo of Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld. Forget the feel-good dances and celebrity chats. This is about power, hypocrisy, and a whole lot of allegedly terrible behavior. Get ready to dive deep into the saga of Ellen's downfall, because the truth is way more scandalous than any award show red carpet.
Old, but it's a rough one now.
It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. That's a rough one. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell and
Ellen, the name synonymous with kindness, generosity, and awkward yet endearing dance moves. She was the poster child for positivity, urging everyone to be kind. But behind the scenes, whispers turned into shouts, and the image of a benevolent queen began to crack. Allegations of a toxic work environment surfaced, painting a picture of a woman who allegedly treated her staff with anything but kindness. The very foundation of her brand, built on the promise of empathy and good vibes, was suddenly revealed to be shaky, if not completely rotten. It's like finding out Santa Claus is actually a grumpy tax collector with a serious candy cane addiction.
Kicked out of show business. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, because I'm mean. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be mean and be in show business. No, they'll kick you out.
Now enter Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld, two figures from completely different corners of the media landscape. Rogan, the podcast king, the guy who'll talk to anyone about anything. Gutfeld, the conservative commentator, the one who likes to poke fun at everything, especially liberal icons. These two, in their own unique ways, began to dissect the Ellen phenomenon, and what they found wasn't pretty. They peeled back the layers of carefully crafted PR, revealing a reality that contradicted the public image. Think of it as the media equivalent of Batman and Robin teaming up to expose a villain masquerading as a beloved public figure. The odd pairing of a comedian-leaning political commentator and a podcast guru was all it took to cause the fall of a daytime empire.
she doesn't seem nice. But that people have a very poor judge of character. She doesn't seem nice. It seems forced. People that are like that all the time, she doesn't seem nice. It's very forced. And whatever, you're allowed to be a bitch, right? You're allowed to be a bitch. You're allowed to be nasty to people. You're accomplished. You're a comedian. You did the whole thing. What you're not allowed to do is have a Guantanamo Bay situation in the backstage of your show where
the facade of niceness Ellen cultivated was finally being questioned. The curtain pulled back to reveal a starkly different reality. Stories emerged of employees being treated poorly, of a demanding and unforgiving work environment. The constant pressure to maintain the illusion of happiness seemed to have created a pressure cooker behind the scenes. It was as if the "be kind" mantra was a carefully constructed marketing campaign, rather than a genuine philosophy. Suddenly, Ellen's smile felt less like a beacon of warmth and more like a carefully constructed mask. The allegations ranged from not being allowed to look at her, to being fired for no reason, to the whole staff existing solely to be background props.
Bales for the UK. All right, I'm gonna go to you first, Kat, because this is such I think you understand this story. So Ellen and her wife, Portia, have left their millionaire haven of Montecito for England. Now, they're saying they'll never come back in the wake of Trump's win. Do you think that's the reason why she's leaving?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen got canceled for real a few years ago from just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like a single comment she said or something she did, just lots of people saying that working for her was a living nightmare and that she's a jerk.
Rogan, ever the curious interviewer, was intrigued by the contrast between Ellen's public persona and the reports of her behavior. He, known for his laid-back style and open-minded approach, found himself captivated by the stories of alleged mistreatment. The idea that someone who preached kindness could be so different behind closed doors was a puzzle he couldn't resist unraveling. Gutfeld, on the other hand, saw it as an opportunity to expose hypocrisy, to take down a symbol of liberal Hollywood. He was like a kid in a candy store, ready to dissect the narrative and highlight the contradictions. It was like a wolf being released into a henhouse, just waiting to cause maximum chaos.
Have they made progress with the strike?
They're picketing right now, so I think it's the early stages. I would think it might take a little bit with this one.
When someone crosses the writer strike, that's some dirty shit. They cross the picket line.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody doing that yet.
I think Ellen did. I had a buddy of mine who was writing on Ellen. Everybody kind of knows now what she's really all about. And that's another one of those. Like,
Ellen's empire was built on relatability and a carefully crafted image of quirkiness. She danced, she gave away prizes, she made ordinary people feel special. But the stories that emerged painted a very different picture. The happy-go-lucky persona seemed to be a carefully constructed act, designed to mask a more demanding and perhaps even unkind reality. It was like discovering that the friendly neighbor who always bakes cookies is actually a secret agent with a penchant for espionage. The more the truth came out, the more that carefully made facade was cracking. It was only a matter of time before it gave way.
Why I was quitting, I would have not come back this year. I really did think about not coming back because it did, it was devastating. I am a kind person. I am a person who likes to make people happy.
No, the real reason, she says, is it was just too easy. Telling the Hollywood Reporter, quote, when you're a creative person, you constantly need to be challenged. And as great as this show is, and as fun as it is, it's just not a challenge anymore. Well, if that's true, here's an idea. When your viewership is down 43%, why not consider that?
But the more Ellen tried to defend herself, the more she seemed to dig herself into a hole. Her explanations sounded hollow, her apologies insincere. The public, once so enamored with her charm, began to see through the act. The image of a compassionate, down-to-earth talk show host was replaced by that of a celebrity desperately trying to salvage her reputation. It was like watching a magician botch a trick, revealing the wires and mirrors behind the illusion. What was once a masterful sleight of hand devolved into a desperate grab for power. She was known to be friends with George W. Bush, who was hated by half of her following, but she said that she was friends with everyone, not that that made things any better.
You have to spend less time with people around you because you're servicing, take Ellen DeGeneres, she's servicing millions of people in her show. Therefore, she has to kind of like mitigate or control the amount of exposure with actual real people. Does that make sense?
It does in theory. But when you, but I'm still always hanging out on the street and I'm super famous. But all these reports, there were so many of them, of people being like, multiple people had the same story of her handlers, before an interview or anything with her, would come up and say, don't look her in the eye.
Then came the infamous apology tour, a carefully orchestrated attempt to regain public favor. But the damage was done. The sincerity was questioned. The public, already skeptical, saw it as nothing more than a calculated PR move. The apology fell flat, failing to quell the growing discontent. It was like trying to put out a raging fire with a water pistol. The public's perception had shifted, and Ellen's carefully crafted image was shattered beyond repair. The staff was probably threatened to give good reactions, or else they'd be fired too.
Or that the bad press actually had nothing to do with her decision. Right, and the Titanic didn't hit an iceberg, it chose to sink. Emily, I watched her comedy special. It was like a huge pity party. She was lamenting how her reputation has suffered. She's essentially as popular as a pit bull with monkeypox. But she's putting this on Trump. Do you think that she's going to be, just everybody's going to love her in England?
Especially the jihadis who love the lesbians so much. They're going to love her there.
The more people looked back at Ellen's career, the more they questioned the authenticity of her persona. The dancing, the giveaways, the constant emphasis on kindness. It all started to feel calculated, a carefully constructed image designed to manipulate emotions and boost ratings. The once endearing quirks now seemed contrived, the spontaneous moments staged. It was like rewatching a favorite movie and suddenly noticing all the plot holes. Her whole image started to feel more like a well-written villain rather than the star of the show.
They asked me, it was St. Patrick's Day, and Ellen asked me to dress as a leprechaun and come out on stage. And this is where, yeah, if you're wondering the low point of my career.
When you say she asked me, you're like, this is not a request.
It wasn't a request. I had to do it.
Yeah, you're doing this.
When you make an employee get in a leprechaun outfit and he's Irish,
Yeah,
that's just cruel. That's racism.
yeah.
I think that, why wouldn't that be? Think about other races. Would you have taken a Chinese employee on the Chinese New Year and put him in one of those big pagoda hats?
Ellen's downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of building a brand on a false pretense. It highlights the importance of authenticity, of living up to the values you preach. In a world of social media and constant scrutiny, it's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain a fake persona. The truth, as they say, always comes out. And when it does, the consequences can be devastating. The tale of Icarus should come to mind. She flew too close to the sun, and her wings burnt away.
There's no coming back from this. Ellen DeGeneres has seemingly vanished from public life after years of dominating daytime television, leaving many wondering what really went on behind the scenes. Recently, Joe Rogan mentioned Greg Fitzsimmons, who was one of her former writers during a podcast, but what many people missed was Greg already opening up about his experiences working on the show in a previous interview, and let's just say it's not all rainbows and sunshine.
In the end, Ellen's story is a reminder that true kindness is not a performance, but a way of life. It's about treating everyone with respect and compassion, regardless of their position or status. It's about living your values, not just talking about them. And perhaps most importantly, it's about being genuine, about showing the world who you really are, flaws and all. Because in the long run, authenticity will always trump a carefully constructed facade. She showed the world a beautiful lie, but when people started looking, the lie withered in the sun.